It was the kind of night Los Angeles only wears once in a season. Velvet sky, music spilling through palm-lined streets, the Navarro estate glowing like a fortress of light above the canyon. The air hummed with perfume, champagne, and secrets. From behind the iron gates, I could hear the laughter, the clinking glasses, the promise of power disguised as celebration. My stepmother's voice echoed in my head, sharp and smooth like broken glass wrapped in silk. "You're not invited, Elena. You don't belong with people like them." But I did belong there. Not because I wanted to be one of them, but because I wanted to see the world that had stolen everything from my father, the world my stepmother had crawled into with her red dress and her false smile. So I stood outside the party she was hosting. Her party. My hands gripping the black metal fence, my reflection shimmering in the gold light. From where I stood I could see them. Men in tailored suits, women in diamonds, music pulsing through the open courtyard like a heartbeat. Him. Victor Navarro. The man they whispered about. The one whose money could stop a mayor's campaign or start a war. The man who owned the house, the cars, the guards. And from what I'd overheard, my stepmother's loyalty. He was taller than I expected. His presence quiet but absolute. When he moved through the crowd, people parted without a word. "Go home, Elena," my stepmother had hissed hours earlier, blocking the door. Her lips painted a cruel shade of power. "This world isn't for girls like you. You'll embarrass me." I had smiled, because that's what you do when you're raised in someone else's house. "You mean I'll remind them who you used to be?" Her hand had struck my cheek before I finished the sentence. And now, with the sting still burning, I watched from the shadows as she poured him another drink. Her laughter too loud, her eyes too desperate. I should have turned away. But something in me, something reckless, hungry, unbroken, refused to. So when one of the kitchen staff slipped out the back with a tray of dishes, I followed. The service hallway smelled of lemon polish and fear. I slipped through, adjusting my dress, the only one I owned that could pass under chandelier light, and stepped out into the edge of the courtyard. The music swelled. No one noticed me at first. People in this world never looked down, only at each other. And then he did. Victor Navarro turned. His gaze swept the crowd, then paused on me, a flash of curiosity breaking through the calm precision of his face. Eyes met. The world went still. He said something to the man beside him, handed off his glass, and started walking toward me. My pulse thudded in my throat. My stepmother saw him move, followed his gaze, and froze. "Elena," she hissed, appearing at my side like a shadow. "What the hell are you doing here?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. Victor was already in front of us. "Who is she?" he asked softly. His voice low enough to make every sound around us fade. My stepmother laughed, a brittle, trembling sound. "No one. Just the help's daughter." He looked at me again, unblinking. "No one doesn't look at me like that." My breath caught. "Elena," I said finally. "Elena Cruz." "Cruz," he repeated, tasting the name like it meant something. "You're not on the guest list." I wasn't invited. That made him smile. Not a kind smile, but a slow, dangerous one. "And yet you came." I wanted to see what I wasn't allowed to. Behind him, my stepmother's face turned pale. "Mr. Navarro, I assure you." He raised a hand, silencing her. "You said this was your stepdaughter." Her jaw tightened. "Unfortunately." He looked back at me, his eyes narrowing slightly. Studying, calculating. "You look nothing like her." "That's the best thing anyone's ever said to me," I whispered. Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, surprise, maybe even admiration. Then, without another word, he extended his hand. "Come with me." My stepmother's voice cracked. "Victor, she's just a..." But he was already leading me through the crowd. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. The music seemed to shift around us as he guided me toward the grand staircase that led to the second floor. The world blurred. The scent of rain on stone filled the air as we stepped out onto the terrace. Below us, the city glittered like it was holding its breath. "Why were you standing outside my gate?" he asked. I wanted to see how it feels to be part of a world I'll never touch. He leaned closer. You're touching it now. I didn't come to be chosen, I said, even though part of me knew that wasn't true. Didn't you? He murmured. The question stole the air from my lungs. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small velvet box and opened it. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet, a single diamond set in its center. Wear this tonight. I can't, I said, stepping back. People will think. They'll think what I tell them to think. And what do you want them to think? He looked at me, and for the first time something in his gaze softened. That I've finally seen someone worth looking at. Behind us, a door slammed. My stepmother's voice rang out from inside, angry and panicked, but Victor didn't flinch. He fastened the bracelet around my wrist himself, his fingers brushing my skin, cold, electric, claiming. Then he turned back toward the glowing ballroom below, the power of his presence pulling every eye with him. Come, he said quietly. If the queen forbids the girl from the party, then the king must invite her himself. The music swelled again, and as he led me down the staircase, whispers spread like wildfire through the crowd. Elena Cruz, I heard someone say. The girl the cartel boss chose. I didn't know if it was a blessing or a curse. But as his hand closed around mine, I felt the world shift, and I knew that whatever this night was meant to be, it had already begun rewriting my fate. The morning after the party, the city still shimmered like a secret. I woke in the small apartment I shared with my father's old books and my stepmother's perfume lingering in the air. The bracelet Victor Navarro had placed on my wrist caught the light from the cracked blinds, a golden thread connecting me to a world that didn't belong to me. I tried to tell myself it was just a dream, that the most feared man in Los Angeles hadn't noticed the invisible girl behind the gates, hadn't taken her hand in front of a room full of power and promise. But when I looked at the bracelet, reality stared back. The headlines hit before noon. Elena Cruz, the mystery girl at Victor Navarro's gala. The cartel king's choice. Every news site carried a photo, me beside him on the marble staircase, my eyes wide, his gaze unreadable. By the time I arrived at the cafe where I worked in Echo Park, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I turned it off and shoved it into my apron, pretending not to notice the way the customers looked at me. When I walked into the back, Maya, my coworker and only real friend, nearly dropped her tray. Elena. Holy hell. Is that you? I sighed. Yeah. She grinned. You went to the Navarro party. How? I didn't go. I wandered into the house of a cartel boss, she said, eyebrows raised. Girl, you don't wander into that. You get summoned. I laughed, even though my stomach twisted. Maya lowered her voice. People say he runs everything south of Ventura. Politics, imports, half the damn art scene. You know what they call him. I didn't want to. The gentleman ghost. Because he never raises his voice. He just makes things disappear. Her smile faded when she saw my face. Elena. Tell me you're not involved with him. I'm not, I said quickly. It was just a moment. That's all. But even as I said it, I felt the weight of the bracelet, as if it were whispering a different truth. By evening, my stepmother came home early, heels clicking against the tile like a countdown. She didn't knock before entering my room. You humiliated me, she said flatly. Good. Do you think this is a game? Do you think you can just walk into my life and ruin it because some man with a name likes your face? I didn't ask for him to notice me. You wanted him to, she snapped. You think I didn't see it in your eyes when he touched your hand? You think I don't know what kind of girl you are? The kind that doesn't bow to you. Her hand moved so fast I barely saw it, the slap echoing before the sting hit. I stared at her, shocked. She'd hit me before, but never with that much hatred. I built everything you see, she hissed. You will not take it from me. Then she turned and left, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. I stood there for a long time, staring at my reflection, the mark on my cheek, the gold glint at my wrist, and the girl who didn't know where she ended and danger began. That night, the black car appeared outside my building. No message, no explanation. Just a driver in a tailored suit who stepped out and said, "Mr. Navarro requests your company." I hesitated, the city humming beyond the rain. "Why?" He opened the back door. "He doesn't explain. He summons." Maya's words came rushing back. "The gentleman ghost." Still I got in. The drive wound through Laurel Canyon, city lights fading into the dark silhouettes of hills. When the gates opened, the Navarro estate looked even more unreal. Silver fountains, manicured gardens glistening under moonlight, guards stationed like statues. The driver led me through a marble foyer into a grand hall filled with quiet music. Victor stood near the fireplace, a glass of whiskey in hand. His tie loosened, his eyes sharp even in the dim light. "Elena," he said, turning toward me. "You came. I didn't have much choice." "There's always a choice." He smiled faintly. "But most people don't take it." "I'm not most people." He seemed pleased by that. "No, you're not." He gestured for me to sit. I didn't. "Why am I here?" Yes. He studied me for a long time before answering. "Because last night you walked into my house when no one else would dare. You didn't belong, and yet you didn't flinch. That's rare." "I'm not rare. I'm just poor. That's what makes you dangerous." His words unsettled me. "I don't want anything from you." He smiled again, a small, knowing curve. "You think this is about what you want?" He set his glass down, stepping closer until the space between us felt charged, unsteady. "People come to me begging, for money, for power, for protection. But you showed up uninvited and made me see the world stop. I can't ignore that." "I didn't mean to." "I don't believe in accidents," he interrupted softly. "Only fate, and consequences." He reached into his pocket and took out a small black card, heavy, engraved in gold. "This is for you." "What is it?" "An invitation. Tomorrow night. The Navarro Foundation Gala." I frowned. "That's where the city's elite gather to pretend they still have souls," he finished. "And you will be there. On my arm." I took a step back. "No. That's not my world." He smiled. "It wasn't mine either. Until I decided it would be." He pressed the card into my palm. "Be ready by 8. "I'm not going." He leaned in slightly, voice dropping to a murmur that brushed the air between us. "You will. Because deep down, you want to know why the forbidden gate opened for you." Then he turned away, as if the conversation were over. I stared at him, at the man who just changed my life with a sentence, and I realized something I didn't want to admit. He was right. Because somewhere between fear and defiance, curiosity had already taken root. And the next night when the black car came again, I would open the door. The next night, the city looked like it was holding its breath. The Navarro Foundation Gala wasn't just a party. It was a parade of influence, where senators shook hands with sinners and photographers made gods out of criminals. The ballroom at the Beverly Wilshire was a cathedral of glass and gold, filled with music that sounded too elegant to belong to this much danger. And I was walking into it on Victor Navarro's arm. The black dress they sent fit perfectly, too perfectly, as if it had been made to remind me that nothing about this moment was mine. The diamond bracelet still circled my wrist, its weight heavier than ever. As we entered, every head turned. Conversations paused. The air itself seemed to rearrange around him, and by extension around me. "Elena Cruz," Victor murmured, leaning close enough for his breath to touch my ear. "Smile. They've already decided you're a mystery." I forced a smile, the kind you wear when you're trying not to drown. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Who is she?" "The girl from the party. He brought her here." And somewhere across the room, my stepmother stood frozen, her champagne glass trembling in her hand. Her smile cracked when she saw me. Victor noticed. "Ah," he said, following my gaze. "The woman who tried to keep you out. She's going to hate me forever," I whispered. Then you're doing something right. Dinner was a blur of chandeliers and cameras. Victor sat at the head of the table, his control absolute, his charm like velvet hiding steel. Men leaned in when he spoke. Women pretended not to stare. And I, the girl who wasn't supposed to exist in this world, sat beside him, trying not to let the glittering illusion swallow me. At one point he turned to me, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "You're quiet." "I'm watching," I said. "And what do you see?" "Everyone wants something from you." He smiled faintly. "And what do you want?" I hesitated. "To understand why you chose me." He leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly. "Does it matter?" "It does to me." For a moment silence hung between us, the kind that feels dangerous, like the pause before lightning. Then he said, "Because you're the only one in this room who doesn't owe me anything yet." "Yet," I repeated softly. "So that's what this is about, debt." "Everything is about debt," he said, his tone like a confession. "Even love." Before I could reply, applause filled the room. A man from the city council had stood to toast Victor, praising his foundation, his vision for rebuilding the city, his philanthropy. I watched Victor smile, polite, rehearsed, and wondered how many people in this room knew what kind of building his money really came from. When the speech ended, he leaned close again. "Come. I want to show you something." He led me through a side door and into a private balcony overlooking the glittering Los Angeles skyline. The noise of the gala softened to a distant hum. "This city," he said quietly, "runs on illusion. People think they're free because they can choose which cage to live in." I looked at him. "And what's yours?" He smiled without humor. "Responsibility. Is that what you call it?" "It's the only name that lets me sleep at night." The wind lifted a strand of my hair, and before I could move, he reached out and tucked it gently behind my ear. His fingers brushed my skin, light, deliberate. "You don't belong here," he said. "I know. And yet you fit." The words made my pulse quicken. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "You don't even know me." He studied me for a long time. "Maybe I'm tired of knowing everyone else." The way he said it, quiet, dangerous, sincere, made my chest ache. But before I could speak, the door burst open. My stepmother. She stormed onto the balcony, her face flushed, her voice trembling with a fury that was part fear, part humiliation. "Victor, what is this? What game are you playing?" He turned to her, calm as ever. "A simple one. I invite who I please. You're humiliating me in front of everyone." He arched an eyebrow. "Do you imagine I owe you protection from embarrassment?" She looked at me then, eyes sharp, voice shaking. "You think you're special, don't you? You have no idea what kind of man he is. You'll regret this, Elena. You'll regret all of it." Victor stepped forward, his tone still smooth but colder now. "Be careful, Isabel. You're speaking to me in my house." Her face fell, not out of fear but out of realization. Whatever power she thought she held here had just evaporated. She turned to leave but paused at the door, her voice low, brittle. "He only chooses the ones he can break." Then she was gone. The silence that followed was unbearable. Victor poured himself a drink from the balcony bar. His movements controlled, distant. "You see why I prefer your company," he said finally. I didn't answer. I just stared at the city lights below, feeling the weight of every word that had been spoken, and the ones that hadn't. Finally I said, "She's right about one thing." He looked at me. "Which thing?" "That you only choose people you can control." For a heartbeat I thought I'd gone too far. But instead of anger, a shadow of a smile crossed his lips. "Then maybe I made a mistake," he said softly. He stepped closer, so close that his scent, smoke and salt and something colder, filled the air between us. "Because I don't think I can control you, Elena. And that terrifies me." I wanted to move, to breathe, to leave. But I couldn't. Because somewhere inside me, something dangerous had already begun to stir, something that felt like curiosity and longing tangled together. When he left me on the balcony that night, the city still glowing below, I touched the diamond bracelet and finally understood what it really was. Not a gift, tether. And the only question left was whether it was meant to pull me closer to him, or drag me under. The days after the gala blurred into a rhythm that didn't feel like my own life. Bills, cars, secrets. Victor Navarro had turned me into a story, and stories in his world were currency. Everywhere I went, doors opened too easily, voices softened, strangers whispered. My face appeared in gossip blogs, my name in conversations I didn't belong in. But beneath the glamour, something darker pulsed. Because every morning, a black SUV waited outside my apartment, engine running, driver silent. And every night, a single white rose appeared on my doorstep. No note, no explanation. Just his presence, invisible but absolute. Maya warned me. This isn't romance, Elena. It's surveillance. I wanted to believe she was wrong. But deep down I knew she wasn't. Still, when the invitation came, handwritten, sealed with his crest, I went. The Navarro mansion sat beneath a bruised sky that evening, the hills wrapped in mist. Inside, the rooms glowed with soft candlelight. I expected company, another gala of masks and murmurs. But the house was silent. Victor was waiting by the fireplace, a glass of red wine in his hand, the firelight catching on the edges of his gray suit. "You came," he said. "You didn't give me a reason not to." He smiled faintly. "You're angry." "I'm confused," I said. "You show up in my life, drag me into your world, and now every headline calls me yours." "You're not mine," he said softly. "Then tell them that." He didn't answer. He just looked at me for a long moment, the kind of gaze that made air feel optional. Finally he said, "Do you know what happens to people who stand beside me, Elena?" "I'm starting to. They burn." I stepped closer to the fire, the heat brushing my skin. "Maybe I already have." His expression shifted, something between admiration and sorrow. "You don't understand what you're asking for." "I'm not asking for anything." "Yes," he said quietly. "You are. You're asking to matter." The words hit like a confession. And before I could stop myself, I said, "Maybe I just want to stop being invisible." He moved then, sudden, fluid, inevitable, closing the space between us until I could feel the warmth of his breath against my skin. "You think I made you visible," he said. "But you were the brightest thing in the room before I ever looked." My heart stumbled. "I don't want to be your project, Victor." He reached up, his fingers brushing my cheek. "You're not my project," he whispered. "You're my consequence." The fire cracked behind us. For a moment, it was just the two of us, the quiet pull between danger and desire, both of us too proud to admit which one we feared more. Then the sound shattered. Glass broke somewhere in the corridor. A shout echoed down the hall. Victor turned instantly, all softness gone. "Stay here," he ordered. But I followed. Down the marble corridor, two guards struggled with a man, blood on his shirt, fury in his voice. My breath caught when I recognized him. Luca Navarro, Victor's son. "Let him go," Victor commanded. The guards obeyed, stepping back. Luca stood, shaking, eyes wild. "You should have stayed out of this, Dad." Victor's tone hardened. "You don't give orders here." Luca turned toward me then, eyes full of something like recognition and regret. "You're the girl from the party." I nodded, uncertain. He laughed bitterly. "Of course. He always needs a new obsession." "Enough," Victor snapped. But Luca ignored him. "Do you even know who he really is?" he asked me. "Do you know what he's done?" "I know what they say," I whispered. "They don't know the half of it," he said. "He doesn't just own this city, Elena. He owns the people in it. He buys their silence. And when they stop being useful—" "Stop," Victor said, his voice low, warning. Luca looked straight at his father. "You killed her, didn't you?" The air went still. Victor's eyes darkened. "Leave." "You killed my mother," Luca said. Victor didn't speak, but the silence was enough. The truth hung there, raw, unbearable and real. I felt the room tilt around me. Victor. He turned toward me, and for the first time, I saw something fragile flicker behind his control. Guilt. Maybe even grief. It was an accident, he said finally, voice trembling. She wanted to leave. She threatened to take him. I lost control. Luca's hand shook. You call that an accident? Everything I've built, Victor said, was to protect you from that night. Luca's eyes filled with tears. You can't build an empire on ghosts. He stormed out before Victor could stop him, his footsteps echoing through the hall. When the door slammed, the silence was deafening. I turned to Victor. You killed her. He closed his eyes. I didn't mean to. But you did. His voice broke then, low, raw. And that's why I saw you. Because you looked at me the way she did before she stopped believing I could change. I felt tears burn my throat. You didn't choose me, Victor. You resurrected her through me. He looked at me then, and the pain in his eyes was almost worse than the truth. You were never supposed to know. The firelight flickered between us, turning his face into something half shadow, half remorse. I stepped back. You can control your city. You can buy your silence. But you can't keep me. Elena. No, my voice was shaking now. You said people who stand beside you burn. Then let me go before I do. He didn't stop me. He just watched as I walked away. Through the marble hall, past the portraits, past the guards who didn't dare move. Outside, the night smelled like rain again. The gates opened without a word. And for the first time, I realized the imbalance wasn't between power and fear. It was between the girl he'd chosen, and the woman who'd finally chosen herself. The rain returned that night, washing the city in silver streaks as if it were trying to rinse away its sins. Los Angeles slept below me, its lights flickering like dying stars, and for the first time since the party, I felt truly alone. I had walked away from Victor Navarro's mansion, from the man who could control everything but the truth. The bracelet he gave me still clung to my wrist, a gleam of gold under the streetlights, mocking me with every reflection. I stopped in front of a drainage tunnel that emptied into the canal. The water surged beneath me, black and restless. I unclasped the bracelet, held it over the current and whispered, "No more." The gold fell, caught the light once, and vanished. Weeks passed. I moved into a small apartment downtown, above a bookstore that smelled like dust and ink. I got a job at a photography studio, learning to capture light instead of chasing shadows. Sometimes I thought about him. Not the man the newspapers wrote about, the philanthropist king or cartel monarch, but the one who looked at me on that terrace and confessed that even power couldn't resurrect the dead. I told myself I'd buried that part of my life. But the truth was, it buried itself inside me. Until the letter came. No return address. My name written in ink that looked almost like smoke. Inside was a single photograph. It was taken from a distance. Grainy but unmistakable. Victor standing beside a grave. His suit rumpled, his expression unreadable. Beneath him a headstone. Isabella Navarro. My stepmother. The date was 2 days after I'd left the mansion. And scrawled across the back of the photo were 4 words in his handwriting. I kept my promise. My hand shook. I didn't know if it was fear or closure. Because in the quiet between us, I finally understood. He hadn't killed her that night, not directly. But his empire had. His world had. And now, with her gone, the only thing left standing between him and the past was me. I tried to ignore it. I tried to keep breathing. But that's the thing about power. Even when you leave it, it doesn't leave you. 3 nights later, I saw the black SUV again. Parked across from my building. No movement. No sound. Just presence. I told myself it was paranoia. Until I stepped outside, and the driver's window rolled down. "Miss Cruz," the man said, his tone calm, formal. "Mr. Navarro would like a word." I have nothing left to say to him. He nodded once. Then you'll listen. He handed me an envelope, sealed with the same crest I'd seen etched into every surface of Victor's home. Opened it. Inside was a plane ticket. Los Angeles to Mexico City. Unway. Departure tomorrow. And a note beneath it. For the truth, I didn't go. Not right away. But the next morning the news broke. Los Angeles magnate Victor Navarro missing after helicopter crash over the Baja coast. Wreckage found. No survivors identified. The photograph fell from my hands. 4 hours I sat in silence, listening to the hum of the city outside. The man who had pulled me into his orbit, who had tried to own me, save me, ruin me, was gone. And I couldn't decide if I felt free or hollow. 2 months later, I stood at a small art gallery downtown. One of my photographs hung on the wall, a shot of the city skyline under rain, lights blurring into gold and gray. A journalist stopped in front of it. "Beautiful," she said. "It almost looks alive." "It is," I replied softly. "It just hides its heartbeat." When she walked away, I turned to leave and froze. A man stood near the exit, half in shadow. Clean-shaven, black suit. The kind of presence that could only belong to someone who never needed to announce himself. Eyes met. And even though I knew it couldn't be, that the crash, the fire, the headlines all said he was gone, my heart still recognized him. He didn't smile. Didn't move. Just watched. Then, slowly, he lifted his hand to his chest, 2 fingers tapping once against his heart, and disappeared into the crowd. I stood there, breathless, the sound of my pulse louder than the music. Maybe it was imagination. Maybe it was guilt. Or maybe the truth was simpler. Men like Victor Navarro never really died. They just learned to live in the spaces between the light and the dark. That night, back at my apartment, I opened my window and let the rain in. The city glowed below, restless, alive. I whispered to it. Not a prayer, not a goodbye. Whatever you wanted me to see, I see it now. Because I finally understood what he'd meant the first night we met. Fate isn't real. Only consequences are. And sometimes the most dangerous thing you can ever be is chosen.